Good morning, doctor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And I got to say, based upon your Zoom profile pic, you look like a pretty cool dude.
It's all in the Gene Simmons attitude. It's look the part, dress the part, be the part.
I can relate, my friend.
Well, look at your picture. My God.
Thank you.
Listen to you. You've got a powerful alto voice. Have you always had that voice?
Yes, and I'm a singer as well, just a hobbyist. But I've always had this voice. And funny enough, I would say it has been the secret of my success and also the source of a whole lot of being made fun of.
In the way of?
Well, you may notice I have a slight accent.
But I'm from the South. I get that.
Okay, so yeah. So the accent, people either love it or they hate it, and they'll let you know either way. I tell you that.
You know what's really interesting, doctor, is that what I hate about the Southern accent are the people that try to fake it on television and in movies.
Tell me about it.
I mean,
remember True Blood?
Oh yeah, and
yes.
It's one of those things where it's like don't even try it, because it is a way of life. It is not something you can impersonate.
You're right.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, I'm proud of this podcast. And the reason why I love this podcast is because I believe that every city has a secret, and you are unveiling the secret of this town.
Yes. Yes. And I'll tell you what, Danville, Virginia got a whole collection of secrets, and we could really go into any number of hidden trunks and dig up those stories. But this one was one that caught me by surprise. And it was a story that had been alluded to throughout my youth because someone very close to my family, her own family involved. And so we knew that there was some criminality, we knew there was some public corruption, and we knew there was some sort of sex work going on too. But I never really knew all of it. A absolute gold mine of raw material, which was newspaper clippings from the 1970s, which she had found in her dead mother's locked trunk. Mm-hmm. And when put together chronologically, told a story that was so wild, so fascinating. I'm telling you, I've been a researcher my whole life. I was an academic, and there's only a few times in life when you come across source material and you immediately know this is gold. And this was one of those times.
To build on it, that's the toughest thing about the whole thing, is that it's like, okay, something had to say yes inside of you in order to take this to the next level.
Yes. You know why? You know what said yes inside of me?
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Because I related with these women. And I could only imagine how I related with them, however, because in the newspaper coverage and in the official coverage, they are never nothing more than the prostitute.
Yeah.
This is a story of men, and we learn all about the men. And by the way, I'm sure these women appreciated that privacy at that time. However, I myself worked in the sex industry for a long time. 16 years.
Wow.
Yes. And I was drawn so deeply to trying to tell the stories and understand the perspectives and the experiences of the women who were involved, because I thought if I would have been born a couple decades earlier, they would have absolutely had me in that truck stop. I was a troubled young woman.
Yeah.
I had a difficult youth. I was looking for love. I was looking for some way to be somebody. And so it felt like seeing my own life in another generation. I had to know more. And I felt like the world needed to know more.
I think you were called to this then, Because you knew the story, and then all of a sudden this story appears in your hands. I mean, it's like you're the only one that could really relate with it.
You know what? I'm such a deep pragmatist. I don't believe in anything, but sometimes I feel like the same way. Like this was meant for my life. And indeed, the day that I got these news articles, I said to my husband, I looked at him and I said, this is about to take the next decade of my creative life. And I do believe that. I'm 3 years in, and I'm ready to go another 7 to flesh this out in all different kinds of ways.
My question to you is that how did you step up to the podcast? Because, I mean, so many people, I'm a broadcast teacher. I've been one since 1988. And the thing is that people always go, I don't know what I want to do with my podcast. I'm going to hold off. And then I meet people like you, Doctor, and it's like, I don't hear that in your voice at all.
Well, I am an ambitious woman. I'm going to tell you that. Really. I'm a bulldog. I'm a CEO. Once again, I was, I don't know if you're supposed to say the word stripper these days, but I was a stripper my whole life, so I'm used to just, you can't stop me.
Right.
But there was one thing that set this on fire. Now, I knew I had this material. I knew it was gold. I had just written a book, which was my own memoir. So initially I thought, okay, I'm about to write another book. This will be a book. But then just a few days before a major professional engagement, I came across this dang old competition. Next Great Podcast by iHeart and Tongle.
Wow.
And it was like about 10 days left to enter, and huge pitch deck needed. I contacted my partner in artistic crime, Guy Kelly, with whom I've created this whole work. And I said, I don't know what you got going on in your life, but you got to drop everything. We got to do this right now. And once I decided to go with this competition and take this as a podcast first, I really knew I did the right thing, because I am a writer, but what I'm best at is oral storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I'll do this y'all keep on giving me shows, baby, because I will oral storytell for another 30 years.
You know what sounds so interesting about this, Doctor, is the fact that you talk about this being back in the 1970s. In my heart, the 1970s weren't that long ago, but to a younger generation, it was a long time ago.
Yes. Listen, it don't seem long ago to me either. I'm 42. So all this was happening in just the few years before I was born.
Wow.
And, something funny is when I was doing my research, at one time I went to the National Archives in Philadelphia, which was an absolute gold mine of information. And among the artifacts they had, there was a logbook from one of these truck stops.
Oh, boy.
And I got excited because I know everybody in Danville, so I couldn't wait to find out who was going. And the first page I opened it up on, it was my maiden name and a description of a man that sounded a lot like my dad.
Ooh.
Right there. I mean, first thing. Wouldn't surprise me at all. This is that kind of man. He would have done something like that.
I've got to give you kudos on how tasteful that you have made this, because I mean, it could have gone in any direction, because there really aren't any rules with podcasting. But the thing is that you do it very tastefully, telling the story.
Thank you. I will say that was the result of very deliberate and careful effort. Mm-hmm. I don't even want to tell you how many drafts of every episode is out there. I hope nobody gets a hold to those early ones. But my main goal was, this is a story that people could be very easily villainized, very easily made flat characters. I wanted to approach every one of these narrative threads and these actual real human beings with as much compassion and complexity as possible, mm-hmm. without delving into unnecessary salaciousness. Mm-mm. I wanted you to care about these people's hearts more than you cared about the activities in the bedroom.
But you know what makes it interesting, Doctor, is the fact that the way that you share the story, it's almost like you're sitting at a dining room table and because you don't have the physical quotes from the people, but you're saying the quotes in the way that you would think that they said it. And that's how we talk in the real world, especially here in the South.
Yes. And this was a journey for me as an artist because I've always been an oral storyteller, but this time I had to voice act.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, if you'll see, listen to the whole series, the voice acting gets better with each episode. By the end, I'm on fire.
So are you stepping into a physical studio with people around you? How are you laying down these tracks, especially when it comes to doing those quotes?
Well, some of those were interviews, which I did in person with some very nice equipment, which the fine folks at iHeart provided me with. I did a few interviews over the phone, and I think that's clear in the quality of the sound, although I kind of like that vibe that it gives, that kind of to it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For the parts where it was me doing the narration, and the scene recreation and the voice acting, do you know, I did all of that in my bedroom closet.
Okay.
And I mean, I was using shelves as desks. I mean, one time I lost a microphone among my shoes for like 2 weeks. It was the most, I think we hear these podcasts and we imagine people in these beautiful studios. I was absolutely in a closet. That was the best sound quality in the house.
It is. It will always be. And can I tell you the reason why? Because there are no air vents in there. Therefore, if you've got an air vent in a room, you're going to pick up the sounds from other rooms. That's nothing more than a speaker.
Yes. Dang. So that's why.
Yeah, because there's no air vents in there. So therefore, it is a solid sound. Mm-hmm. But you know what's really interesting about this? I love the way that you capture, especially in the opening part of the podcast, the good old boys, where they're sitting around the table saying, "I've got an idea. Are you with me on this?" And it had to take place just on the outskirts of Danville, so the police department couldn't come in there and do some damage.
That's correct.
That's pretty smart.
The pleasure that I took in dramatically depicting scenes described on the stand or in the newspapers was an exquisite artistic pleasure. And I, as an artist, give me true stories forevermore, and I will delight in bringing them to life. I've always been a voyeur of other people's lives and history. I've always been, as a child, constructing these scenes in my head. And so it was just such a pleasure to read the facts and then make it come to life. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do you see yourself as being a silent wolf? In other words, the person that stands on the side just like a wolf, and you observe life, you listen, you watch, you study, and then all of a sudden you make your move?
Yes.
Yep. I knew it. I saw that in you.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I'm looking at life for the little poems that exist in the mundane, and I see them every day, and I put them in a back pocket of my mind.
So we've all assumed the truck stop. I mean, my entire life, when there was a truck stop, you always assumed something was taking place there. What about rest areas? Did this include rest areas? Because you're in Virginia, I'm in Carolina. You know what these things are like.
Oh, sure. Well, I would say maybe not rest areas, because, by the way, I'm not sure a rest area is almost a little bit too high class to be on these interstates. No, this ain't going to be a QT or,
Oh, my God.
But there was one place that was involved, and okay, I'll tell it to you like this. Places that were called, quote unquote, health centers. Wellness centers. Mm-hmm. And we all know they still exist. Okay. You see the signs for the spas on the billboards, and it says parking for 18-wheelers. Okay. We get what that is. This is still, I mean, obviously this industry is not dead.
Right.
Yeah.
How much did you learn that has not made it to the 5 p.m. newscast?
A lot.
I bet. Is it too
But
much?
there's no, the volume of data, it was overwhelming. But the most difficult decisions that I had to make. So there's two sides of me. There's the storyteller. I got to get the scoop. I got to get the best stuff. You know, if it's juicy, I want it and I want to put it on there. And then there's me, the human being, who has my own complex and not always clean past that is fighting the urge. I don't want to unnecessarily bring trouble to people.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is I learned a lot of stuff from talking to certain individuals, but they didn't want me to share it, and I can't blame them, and so I didn't.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that Southerners are known for, and I really do want to know this, is that Southerners are known for talking underneath their breath. They kind of walk up to you, doctor, and they say, there's some certain things you should not be talking about. That's all I need to say.
Yes.
Have you run into that?
Yeah, I have. And I'm not sure if you've ever done a project like this, but some of these people experienced what I've been referring to as buyer's remorse.
Mm-hmm.
People would be, oh yeah, I got a story for you. Come on, like, let's do an interview. Let's do this. They'd be all excited. And then you start getting the emails about, oh, I don't know.
Yep.
So yeah, people who were gung-ho in the beginning, when they started to see that this was really going to happen, then they stopped being quite so gung-ho.
God, and that's the time that I want to have that interview right on the spot. Which is why I surround myself with digital equipment at all times. It's like, no, let's do the talk now. We don't have to wait till then. Let's just do it now.
Yes. But you see, and this was my weak spot because in this arena, this was my first rodeo. And I've been a writer my whole life. I have a PhD in literature. I wrote a dissertation. I've written books. But going out there and interviewing people and asking them these deeply personal questions that a lot of them don't want to talk about.
Yep.
Now, that was my first rodeo. And I'll tell you, I want to make people happy. I'm the kind of gal, like, I want to be nice. I'm going to smile at you in the grocery store. I don't want to make nobody uncomfortable. This is a deep part of my personality and probably a deep part of my enculturation in the South. So, I wanted the scoop and I was asking the questions, but it was uncomfortable for me. And I felt like, I felt, I feel kind of bad, but at the same time, I had a job to do and I had to prioritize the art. I had to keep the art in mind over my unending urge to people please.
Mm-hmm. How many times during those conversations did you want to say, well, bless your heart?
Oh, my goodness. I wanted to say it before the conversations even began sometimes. Yes. Or, some of the people would also be, kind of mean or angry.
Yeah,
and that was, yeah.
I love it. You've got to come back to this show anytime in the future. I love your personality. I love what you're doing. Just everything about you is just so spot on.
Oh, man, the feeling is mutual, by the way. You seem like a really cool guy.
Just a guy with long hair. That's it.
Well, hey, that goes a long way for a man.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you. And thank you for your authentic accent. Don't ever lose that. Don't ever lose that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, too.